Right now, as you know, we're being joined by our South Campus, our West Campus. Everybody watching online, let's welcome them right now to the service. Now, a while back, I started reading a book. It's a new book. It's on the New York Times bestseller list. It's called Atomic Habits. And the book is about, it's pretty simple. It's how to cultivate positive habits in your life and how to let go of bad habits. And his premise is by making small changes, you can get incremental results over time in improving on good habits and letting go of the bad habits. So I thought about that. I thought about how important ritual and practice and habits are in our lives. And I started thinking about what are some good habits I have in my life? What are some good habits that you have in your life? Things that you do every single day that make a big difference. There are a lot of habits we can develop. There are a lot of ways we can practice self-discipline that really have an effect on our emotional and spiritual and physical well-being. So think about that for a while. Just think about it. Ask yourself the question, kind of answer this in your mind's eye here and say, what are some positive habits, some good habits I have in my life? What are they? Just think about those. Hang on to them. Now, let's go a little bit negative if we can, all right? What are some bad habits that you have? What are some habits that you have that you know you need to stop? You've tried to stop, you've tried to quit, you've tried this plan, this formula, this book, all this, but you are still stuck in doing the same thing the same way. It's a bad habit. It's dragging you down. It's dragging your family members down. It's dragging down people at work. You know it's bad, you know it's not helping you, you know it's not moving the ball down the field, if you would, but you continue to engage in the bad habit. Now, I could talk about bad habits for a long time. Just my own bad habits. That could be an entire series I'm sure you'd be fascinated by. Perhaps you could too. We all have bad habits. But I can say one of the bad habits I've had for a long time that I've really worked on and continue to work on is the bad habit of worry. Of just worrying, fretting, getting anxious way too much, way too often. I can remember when I was in my 20s, which is just a few years ago, right? It's been stressful during the COVID. So I remember just having difficulty going to sleep at night because my head was spinning and spinning and spinning and spinning and spinning, thinking about the future. And what if this happens? And what if that happens? And what if this doesn't happen? And I remember just trying to go to bed, trying to go to sleep, but swimming in an ocean of worry and anxiety. Young people, we didn't even have the internet yet or cell phones. How can you worry without those gadgets? I don't know, but I did. And we do. We worry about things. Here's the top 5 things that we worry about. If you look at any list on what do Americans worry about the most, these 5 will pop up time and time again. I'm sure none of you are going to be surprised by the list. First thing we worry about the most, work. We worry about work. We talk about work. We worry about our job, especially during these times. Work, it's at the top of the list. Number 2, and it's connected, money. We worry about money. We worry about, will we have enough money at the end of the month to pay for our bills? How am I going to pay for my student loan? What am I going to do with the money that's not coming in my business? We worry about money. It keeps us up at night. Number 3, relationships. Right? If you're single, you're worried about, will I get married? If you're married, you're worried about, hey, Can I be happy and can I have a more secure marriage? If you have kids and you're a mom, you're probably a professional worrier. You're probably in the Worry Hall of Fame. Kids were created to create worry and anxiety. You're normal. So we worry about relationships all the time. It's the top of our list. Another thing we worry about is our health, our physical health, our emotional health. And we worry about the health of our friends, the health of our parents, the health of our grandparents. We worry about health. Number 5, we worry about what other people think about us. We worry about what other people are thinking about us. I can tell you this, most people are not thinking about you that much. That's the good news, you know. I wonder what they're thinking about this, and I said this and did this, and you know, they're probably thinking about that for like a nanosecond, and they've moved on to their own little movie where they're the star, producer, and director. That's just how we operate as human beings. But we worry. It's a top 5 worry about what other people think about us, what they're saying about us, what they texted to a friend about us. So we have all these worries. Worry is a crazy thing. Worry is pandemic. Worry is insidious. It's a part of the human condition. And some people are more prone to worry than others, okay? Some people are kind of born a worry wart, as we used to call them. Worry. Someone said that worry is like a rocking chair, right? I mean, you can do it, it's an activity, but you won't get anywhere. Worry is like stewing without doing. It's participating in catastrophic thinking. Something's going to bad and dreadful is going to happen to me or my family or my finances or my relationships tomorrow or next week or next month. And we start worrying, and our mind and our thoughts start spinning out of control. And it can have an effect, I know, I've been there, on our physical health. You can worry so much, be so filled with anxiety that you can't function physically. Sometimes worry leads to depression on one side, where you don't feel like getting out of the bed and doing nothing. Other times, worry in its extreme form can take the form of a panic attack, where your heart is racing so fast and so quickly and you're so worried, you feel like you're literally having a heart attack. So worry is a bad habit, and it's not something that you mess around with. It's something that you must be proactive in attacking and doing something about. Now, at the same time, this is what's kind of a little bit crazy for me, a little bit cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, if you would, about worry. Some people, and you know who you are, some people love to worry. Come on. They do. They wouldn't say it, but you know, they love to worry. Worry is a part of their MO. Worry is the way they gain attention from others by telling people how difficult and how tough their life is. They love to complain. They love the drama. They love to play the victim card and to be the martyr and to say, I'm so worried, and to have their kids or their friends say, oh, we're praying for you, we're helping you now. And they just kind of worry is a way they kind of boost up their self-esteem in some weird, counterproductive way. Other people have a relationship with worry where they think worry is actually problem solving. You ever do that? You think, if I'm worrying, I'm actually solving problems here, but you're probably not. Your worry is preventing you from actually taking steps to tackle the problem at hand. Some people fear, if I stop worrying, then the world's going to fall apart. It's like worry holds up your world, right? Or it holds up the world. And worrying to you conflate worrying with caring. So you fear if you start dealing with your worry and dealing with your anxiety, that means you're going to stop caring. So we have this strange relationship with worry. Like I said, I've dealt with worry, battled with worry, and will continue to do that. And other people kind of enjoy worry. That's kind of who they are. That's kind of their groove, their jam, as people say today. Now, during this time we're living in right now, this COVID, coronavirus craziness and all that's happening in our country, and it's like we're in some Stephen King novel, isn't it? Or don't you think that? Or we're like in a long episode of The Twilight Zone that's never gonna end. What is going on? We're confronting worries and problems and situations that we have never confronted before in our entire lives. It's insane. But it's interesting when you're looking at things that are happening right now in our world and new problems and stressors that we have, or you look at a problem that you have in your life, let's say, a bad habit. Let's say you really want to lose weight, but you don't know how to do it. But if you think about it, hey, I want to lose weight. I've gained that COVID-15, right? I put it on. Now I've got to do something to attack that issue. Or let's say you're struggling with an addiction. You need to tell someone, hey, I'm addicted to this, and then I've got to do something to tackle that addiction. Or you look at your finances, you say, my finances are, they're out of order. I've got to do something. I've got to talk to someone. I've got to change and make some actions. Now, it's funny to me, in a weird way, how whether it's, with our finances or with our health or something else, we will do something proactive. But when it comes to worry and anxiety, and it's a perennial problem, most of us deal with this in this room, we just kind of think it's just gonna kind of go away. And it's gonna take care of itself. And maybe I'll go to church now and then, and I'll hear a sermon on, don't worry, be happy, or don't be anxious and pray. And you'll go, oh yeah, I'm gonna deal with it that way. Well, I can tell you by experience, firsthand experience, that's not the way it works. You have to work on your worry, okay? If worry is something you're struggling with and something that's getting you down or it's keeping you awake at night, if you feel overburdened and over anxious, you have to work on it. You can't just, snap your fingers and it goes away. You can't simply get a pep talk or a verse here and say, worry's done. No, you're gonna have to be much more proactive and intentional in dealing with your worry. So I began to ask myself a very basic question. What about God? Does God want us to worry? Does God want us to live in a place where worry and anxiety is weighing us down to an extent that we cannot function? That we do not have peace inside of our hearts, inside of our minds? Does God want you to live that way? Does God want me to live that way? And what does he have to say to us about worry? I think one of the things he would say to us right off the bat is, you need to practice some social distancing from your worries. How about that? Let's try that. We need to practice some social distancing from our worries. He lays that out for us in the big four, in Philippians chapter 4. So if you have a Bible, turn to Philippians chapter 4. If you brought a Bible with you, or if you access that on your phone, or however you do it, tablet, go to Philippians chapter 4. We are in Philippians 4 for several weeks. It is an epic chapter. It is a very practical chapter. It's a very encouraging chapter. It's one that I turn to again and again and again. And in the chapter, Philippians 4, verses 6 through 7, we see God's therapy, if you would, when it comes to worry and anxiety. Paul's writing this in around 61 AD. He has nothing to be worried about. He's in prison, chained up to a Roman prisoner, to a guard. His life is just hunky-dory. What does he say? He says, do not be anxious about anything, But in every situation, by prayer and petition with thanksgiving, present your request to God. Check out the results. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. This is one of the epic passages on worry in the Bible. Another one would be in Matthew 6:34, where Jesus says what? Don't worry about tomorrow. Matthew 6:34. For tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. So what do we do about worry? How do we practice some social distancing from our worries? What does God have to tell us? Well, the awesome thing about this particular problem and this particular bad habit that at least I struggle with, and maybe a couple of other people do here, I don't know if there are any more than 2 or 3 that do, but if there are, come along with us. God gives us some very practical words on how to deal with worry. And again, this is not just a one-off. It's something that we have to continually practice. And the first thing that I like to do, and I think it suggests this here in the scripture, to deal with worry is to start your day off by thanking God. Start your day off by thanking God. I like to start my day off with coffee and conversation with God. That's the way I like to start my day. That's my morning ritual, if you would. And when I pray, and I'm not always the best prayer person in the world or a prayer warrior. Sometimes I pray good prayers, sometimes they're okay. Some people are uncomfortable with me rating my own prayers or their prayers, but I just do, right? You ever been with people that are really good prayers? I'm kind of medium to low. But one thing I do in prayer is that so many times when I'm stressed, when I'm anxious, I begin to thank God. I start my prayer off not asking, God, give me this, God, do this, God, please, can you intervene here? God, perform a miracle there and do, I don't do that. My prayer is more, God, thank you. Thank you for this day. Thank you that I got some rest last night. Thank you for the coffee that I just had to drink. Thank you for my wife. Thank you for most of my kids. Thank you. I'm kidding. Thank you for my entire family. Thank you for the Bible, that I can read your word today. Thank you that I have a job. Thank you for the bed that I slept in. Thank you for the people who govern our city. Thank you for our people in our police and fire. I just start praying God, thanking God for our church and for people I work with. I just begin thanking and thanking and thanking and thanking God. And when you start thanking God enough and kind of enter into that space of gratitude, it's like worry and anxiety start running out the door. They don't like hanging out there with gratitude to God. That's what God says to us in this word here, this encouraging word. How do we let go of anxiety and worry? We make our requests to God. We tell God what we need, and we do that saturated in a spirit of thanksgiving. And we begin to thank God and to thank God and to thank God and to thank God and express gratitude toward Him. Worry and anxiety will leave us. Life is a giant gratitude test. Can we stay in that space of thanksgiving? And when we start thanking God and writing down His blessings and thanking God, no matter how tough it is, we'll hear that announcer come over the loudspeaker and say, worry has now left the building. And we'll begin to experience the peace of God in our life. What else did he tell us about his therapy for worry for us? Also, he says this, that we have to turn it over to God. It says with prayer and petition, or maybe your translation says with prayer and supplication, present your requests to God. Present them to God. I like what Peter says in 1 Peter 5:7. We cast all of our anxiety on him because he cares for us. Again, you have to realize this. Again, I can't emphasize this enough. It's hard to emphasize it enough. The people who wrote these words, Peter and Paul and John, they were living under times of great duress, incredible stress, incredible anxiety. They were being persecuted galore. Every day was life and death. They were in and out of prison, hearing crazy stories all the time, and yet they're telling us, do not be anxious about anything. Cast all your worries, cast all your anxieties upon God. And maybe Peter used the word cast because what did Peter do? He was a fisherman. He knew all about casting. If you know about fishing, you have to cast. You have to get the lure or the bait away from you, and the way you do that is you cast it. So when you're carrying around anxiety, when you're carrying around worry, and it's all up inside of your mind, and you're living inside of your head, and you can't go to sleep, and you can't eat, you're just carrying the weight of the world on your shoulder. You need to take that and just start casting it onto God, casting that into his hands. Maybe write it out on a piece of paper. Here are the cares that I'm carrying around right now. Here are my anxieties about work, about money, about people, about relationships. God, and I'm writing them down, and I'm casting them. I'm giving them to you, and cast them upon him. Again, this is not a one-off, okay? This is something we have to practice on a daily basis, depending upon your level of worry and anxiety. But cast it upon him. Cast your cares upon him. Turn it over to him. Present your request to him. And how can we do that? It's because we know that he cares for us. Love it. What else does he say here? He says, when we do this, when we present our request to God, the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard our hearts and our minds, guard our emotions and our reason. So I thank God. That's the first step. Begin by thanking God of everything you can think of. And then I turn it over to God. I cast that upon him. I lay out my request to him, whether I write it out or put it in a Word document or however you pray it out, get it out. I cast it upon him, and then I trust that God's got this. I trust that he's got this. And that's when this peace of God, this new peace, can enter into our hearts and minds, and it transcends our ability to really understand it and grasp it. You ever had that before in your life where you have a certain peace inside of you when you shouldn't have peace? There's a calm about you where you shouldn't have calm. But it's a gift from God because you've turned it over to him, because you trust that he's got this. There's a story, old story, about a British politician named Whitlock. It's during the 17th century. He was working for Cromwell, and he was just stressed out, and things were, horrible at home. They were horrible abroad, and the worries were just piling up upon him. And he couldn't sleep, and he was keeping his assistant awake, and he couldn't sleep. And so finally, the assistant approached his boss, this powerful leader, and said, "Sir, pray, sir, will you give me leave to ask you a question?" And Whitlock said, "Certainly." And the assistant said, "Pray, sir, do you think that God governed the world very well before you came into it?" And Whitlock said, "Well, sure, undoubtedly." And the assistant said, "Pray, sir, do you think that he will govern it quite well as you're gone out of it?" And Whitlock said, "Certainly, And the assistant said, then pray, sir, excuse me, but do you think that you may trust him to govern it quite well as long as you live in it? Whitlock said nothing, but he fell asleep. God governs the whole world, God governs our land, and God governs our lives. He is providentially over everything that happens. We can trust that God's got this. I don't have it. The experts surely don't have it. But the almighty, all-powerful, self-contained God of this universe has got it all figured out. And this God who's so big and so grand and so sovereign and so powerful loves us so much that he sent his son to die for us, and yet he can't handle our worries? He gave us his son. How will he not freely give us all things, even the ability to deal with this habit of worry and anxiety that gets around us and entangles us? Of course, he will give us the strength to deal with it. He will give us the power. He will take away those worries and anxieties as we trust him, as we cast them upon him, as we thank him. Good news. Good news. God made us. God knows us. God gets us. He knows what we struggle with, and he knows what we're worrying about and what we're anxious about right now. He knows every single thing. We're not hiding it from God. And he's given us so much help in his word, so much help in Philippians 4 alone to deal with this worry and anxiety, to do some social distancing from our worries. I'm reminded of the old gospel song that I learned as a child, probably in vacation Bible school. And the words were, he's got the whole world in his hands. He's got the whole wide world in his hands. He's got you and me, brother, in his hands. He's got you and me, sister, in his hands. He's got the little bitty babies in his hands. He's got the United States of America, this experiment, in his hands. He's got the whole world in his hands.